It's just fantastic.
Captain's Log, Subdate 210707.3. I challenged D. Orcator to a sherbet snort-off with Warrant Officer Crumble. I left him to it though after he jumped the gun and started snorting Crumble's lines and his at the same time. Before we start, I'd like to apologise for this visual, owing to time constraints against me with work and with, well, Uncle Juicy today. I do not have the time to fully edit my avatar into a video and use other visuals as sources. Any sources I use for the topic I want to discuss today, which is going to be a swerve, I don't usually cover the subject because of how polarizing it is, will be linked down below. But the reason I want to talk about it is because of how it now impacts the United Kingdom, and as I am a resident, I would very much like to air my opinion. I'm not going to be discussing sources from the CDC, World Health Organization, or conspiracies. Protests. I might mention protests, but nothing more beyond that, because I don't want a strike. I'm very close to 100,000. I don't want to lose that. Yet. So if you haven't cottoned on what the subject is already based on the title, the thumbnail, and what I've said so far, yes, we are going to talk about the COVID restrictions in England. I would say the United Kingdom, but measures in Wales don't get reviewed until the 15th of July. Northern Ireland have just changed theirs, but they have a review date tomorrow, and it is the intention of Scotland to move to COVID level 0 on the 19th of July, with all legal restrictions being lifted by the 9th of August. That is, of course, unless things change, in which case they'll be the first ones to shove the Scottish people back into their homes. At a Downing Street press conference, the blithering Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that the government was looking to move away from legal restrictions and instead allow people to make their own informed decisions about how to manage the virus. It's been 16 months since we were first shoved into a lockdown. Possibly 15, I can't count. It's gotten so long. Honestly, many of us are beyond caring, but at the same time, it is quite annoying that it took 15 months to say something like that, when after winning the election, and then 3 months after that COVID became a real problem, you decided, with your massive mandate, to shove us all into our homes, with scaremongery like no other. Do forgive me if I seem a little frustrated, but I will concede I am quite excited when I don't have to wear a mask to go into a shop. In one respect, I've often found it quite amusing. In many shopping centres in the United Kingdom, hoodies are banned because they obscure the face. I wonder how they're going to deal with the face mask, since that does a rather good job of, obscure the face. So I'm sure to many of those that are English, you are wondering what changes, or have already heard what changes, in which case, don't mind me, I'm just going to go over it again. Confirmation of the lifting of restrictions and guidance won't actually happen until the 12th of July, when the latest COVID health data will then be reviewed. Although it is expected the following measures will be taken. No limits on social contact. The 1 meter plus rule will be removed, so I assume many shops will be removing that epoxy tape off the floor that is impossible to clean on or around. No legal requirements for face coverings, although their use will be advised in hospitals, healthcare settings, crowded public spaces. If I have to wear one to a gig, I'm going to be quite annoyed. I believe my next one's Behemoth. I'd rather not. And then Ailstorm. I can't drink rum through a face mask, alright? And I'm certainly not doing it through a straw. Nightclubs will be permitted to open. Capacity caps on businesses will be lifted. Hospitality businesses will no longer be required to provide table service only, which is great, because one of the places I clean, a pub, at the most has one person behind the bar. That same person delivers all the drinks. They're really getting their steps on. No limits on numbers at weddings and funerals. No restrictions on worship and singing. No limits on people attending concerts, theatres or sports events. No legal requirements for COVID certificates for any event or venue. The additional guidance to work from home will also end. and limits on named visitors to care homes will be removed. I'd rather, instead of lifting these restrictions, they simply abolished the law which puts these in place, called the Coronavirus Act. But there's a worry here. It's a worry many people have had. Fellow creator and streamer Rose of Dawn tweeted out that I fully believe the government will bring back the restrictions by October, maybe not as draconian as last year, but in effect will be in the same position as if restrictions aren't lifted anyway. It feels like a few months off lockdown rather than the end. The people calling for restrictions to remain will do so indefinitely. Doesn't matter when the government does it, but by Gov's own admission, they wouldn't seek to do so in the autumn anyway, because that's when respiratory viruses spread more. Sure, we're going to see a lot of smug "we told you so" posts when restrictions are back, but it'll be thoroughly meaningless. All that changes is that for a few months we can order a drink at the bar. A sentiment I share. At the moment, infection numbers are on the rise, but because of the air quote vaccination program end air quotes, the link between hospitalizations and deaths has been weakened, with Downing Street saying that hospitalizations, serious illness and deaths will continue, albeit at a much lower level than before vaccinations started, with the dithering Prime Minister saying that the time between the first and second jabs for under 40s would then be cut from 12 weeks to 8. Since a concerted effort has been made to stop using countries for names of more powerful variants of this rather irritating virus, the Delta variant is the more recent, the India one, okay, version that has caused all the stir and skewed the numbers quite a bit. But with the infection rates going up, the number of deaths have not gone with it, which is where yet again I take great issue, because many people and the government are guilty of this as well. They took the infection rate and went with that as the bigger problem, not the numbers of those who died, which were nowhere near the levels of those infected. But what do I know, right? They focused on one statistic and ignored the other one. And it, like many other bits of false news, fake news, nonsense that was peddled, got it fundamentally wrong and led to scaring people unnecessarily when a calmer approach could have easily worked. But of course, a press room was far more important for this. As this all applies to England and have already provided what is happening in other countries, I should explain why they are not abiding what we are doing. They, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, have a devolved administration. That administration has powers. Those powers were granted to them by the United Kingdom Parliament. Because of that, they are free to do whatever they like to tackle the what they call pandemic as best they can to keep their people safe. That way, the job of the English government is to protect England. It's one of the few times you can mention England without being called a racist. The only other instances would include national teams that aren't referenced as United Kingdom or Great Britain. And just to give this some scope with the freedoms we have now to what we will have, which I've already gone through, currently, things like pubs, bars, restaurants are open indoors, unless they have a seated garden. Cinemas, bingo halls, arcades are open. So are museums and galleries. Leisure centres, limits. Outdoor contact sports are in fact permitted. Travel around the UK is allowed. Care homes can receive visitors, but they're nowhere near as free as pre-coronavirus life. And it is because of that and how long it has taken for us to get to this point, even with that law still there, and with the pessimists in Parliament still trying to find a reason to keep us at home, to keep giving us furlough or self-employment income support scheme, knowing that someone has to pay for that eventually, because they don't understand fundamentally that there are over 60 million people in this country who are quite frankly done with this. Which is quite an odd thing to say. It's why there have been so many protests, either against the restrictions or against the vaccination programs. It does run the risk, because of how this has been handled, of creating a two-class system. Those who are vaccinated and those who are not. Which is certainly on par with the idea brought forth by the US government, where they've suggested knocking on people's doors to see if they've been vaccinated. I'm sure many people in the United Kingdom as a whole are greatly frustrated with how this has gone down. I myself am one of those people. The freedoms I currently have are great, but I'd very much like all of it back, so I can go ahead and take it for granted like I did before. With all of this, I do want to know what you think, so please do let me know down below. I know it's not my usual topics. I do have an EOSP for tomorrow and Twat for Friday. I have all of that set up and it's all aside, it's ready to go. I will get on it, I promise. If I don't see you on Twitch tonight, have a fantastic day. Thank you all very much for listening.